I love therapy, and in fact, I've been going to therapy since I was around 6 years old. Though I talk about therapy a lot and may interview some therapists on the show on occasion, nothing that is said in this podcast should be considered a replacement for therapy. If you are struggling, I urge you to please seek guidance from a therapist because you are absolutely worth it. Hello, everyone. You are listening to Wine, Dine, and 69, a podcast about dating, relationships, sex, and self-love. I am your host, Rachel Dalton. I hope everyone is doing well. As always, I am doing great. I'm going to try to keep this intro a little shorter this week, partially because I've already recorded it once, and I recorded a few days ago. I went on my laptop to try and put the entire episode together today. The file wasn't there, so this is my second go at this. Before we get into my conversation with my guest today, her name is Jeanne. She's awesome. I want to talk a little bit about rejection. And I guess part of this is coming from the fact that I have been watching The Bachelorette, like I said a few weeks ago. I blame my friend Mary. I did not think that I was going to be so invested, but here we are. So we're going to embrace it, I guess. Anyway, the finale. And again, if you don't watch it, I am so sorry. No spoilers here, though, I promise, if you do. So the finale aired this week, and it kind of got me started thinking about rejection because I really like the way that Katie handles rejecting people. And I also really like the way that Tayshia does it, kind of pulling people aside and not doing it in a rose ceremony when there's no chance to talk about it. I don't know. I just think that it's more humane, I suppose. So I thought I would talk a little bit about how to go about rejecting someone and the person who's being rejected, how to take it. Because it's something that we all go through at one point or another in our lives. So starting with the person who's doing the rejecting. Of course, the amount of information that you give is going to vary depending on, how long you've been seeing this person, if you're in a long-term relationship, if you're married, whatever. It's all, like, for example, I think that if you're just exchanging a few texts or, messages on a dating app with someone and the conversation dwindles off, or even, if you have talked a little bit, there is no point in sending a rejection text at that point. At that point, ghosting is appropriate. Ghosting is really a problem if, you've seen this person a handful of times, if you've talked to them, if, the intimacy level is high in the level that you are sharing. Like, ghosting is bad, but I also don't think that you need to reject people when you don't even know how invested they are in you at that point. So we're mostly going to be talking about, when you've been out on a few dates with somebody and you're not feeling it, or, you've been in a long-term relationship with someone. Rejection when you are the one rejecting someone. Okay. What I would say here is be kind, be clear, and use I statements, right? I mean, that's a basic thing that any therapist is going to tell you, that when you're having a tough conversation, try to use I statements. Be honest, and the level of honesty is probably going to depend on how long you've been with this person. Of course, again, there's no need to give them a laundry list of all the things that you hate about them, unless there's something that they do, maybe something really, really weird in bed or something, and you want to give them feedback about, hey, maybe don't do this as you're dating around so early, or whatever it might be. Or if they ask for feedback, you can give it to them, but be kind. I mean, this person is already being rejected, and that sucks, regardless of how invested they were in you at that point. You can do it. If you've been in a long-term relationship with someone, I think you should do it in person. But, if you've just kind of been talking to somebody for a little bit and maybe you haven't made things exclusive quite yet, I think you can kind of just send a text that says, hey, thanks so much for dinner the other night. I think you're super cool. I really am not feeling like things are going to go much further than this, kind of feeling more of a friend vibe. And I really do wish you the best. I think you're a super cool person, and good luck. It's kind, it's direct, it's to the point. I think that's the easiest way to go. If you've been with somebody for a longer period of time, you're doing it in person, I think it's really important, in addition to those other things, to be firm. You know, there are some people who are going to take rejection worse than others, and, you know, might try to tell you all the reasons why you shouldn't leave. And we'll get to, you know, why that's bad in a minute. But in general, if you are firm and clear to the point, and, you know, it doesn't come across like you're wavering or, you know, going back and forth on this decision, it's just going to be a lot better, because the last thing that you want is this person holding a torch for you when they really could be spending that time healing. Now, if you are the one being rejected, I think it's also important to be kind, right? Like, it's not going to be, what are you going to accomplish? You might be angry. And that's going to happen, especially if, you know, it's a messy breakup, or, you know, you've been together longer and there's more baggage involved. There might be anger, of course, and no one can fault you for that. But I think the most important thing is that you remember that you, even if you don't now, you know, you had respect and or, you know, love for this person at one point. So kindness really is, as they say, key. Another thing, you know, that we kind of touched on before is begging or trying to change someone's opinion isn't going to benefit you at all. It isn't a great look, in all honesty. You know, I've been in situations, not in long-term relationships, but when I've been talking to someone where, you know, I send that really nice rejection text, maybe a little more questioningly. I used to be a little more passive. And, you know, I would get a response that would tell me why I should reconsider, or, you know, came off as a little bit complaining. I don't know, just weird stuff like that. So begging doesn't work. Believe me, I've done it. I've been on the receiving end of it. It doesn't work. And the fact of the matter is, if you think that they're making a mistake, guess what? They're going to figure it out on their own time eventually anyway. So you don't need to tell them, because as soon as they're living without you, they'll figure it out if it's true. If somebody is rejecting you, listen, take it in stride, and be kind in response. You can ask questions if you want, if you need closure. Now, I would suggest, if you have a feeling that you're going to be hurt, or that you're better off not knowing the answers to these questions, at the end of the day, closure comes from within. I have been reminding myself of that a lot lately. At the end of the day, closure comes from within. So you could ask questions if you feel like it's going to help with that process. And, you know, sometimes it will, but a lot of the times that I go into a conversation with somebody wanting closure, I just come out with more questions. So do what you need to do, but just keep that in mind, that at the end of the day, it's going to come from inside of you. And I mean, rejection is something that, again, everybody faces at one point or another. I mean, I guess there's some people out there who have never been rejected and only do the rejecting, but the great majority of us are going to have experiences on both sides of this fence. I had like a fuzzy in my mouth. Don't know where that came from. Anyway, yeah, it's a universal experience. And so I think that we all, you know, need to have a little bit of empathy, depending on which side we're on, just remembering what it's like to be on the other side, because it's not fun. It's not easy. And know that you'll be okay. Because at the end of the day, like rejection, it might feel like the end of the world. Breakups suck. Talking to somebody for a while and realizing that it's not going to work out for XYZ reason, that really sucks, especially if you saw a lot of promise in them. But you're going to be okay. And I think that's a big thing that I've been reminding myself a lot of lately, is that confidence is holding on to the knowledge and maintaining the belief that you can handle whatever is thrown at you, that you have the strength to endure through pretty much anything, and that you can handle it. And that includes rejection. And, you know, of course, this podcast is about relationships, dating, and sex. But, you know, this applies to jobs too. I mean, getting rejected sucks, especially if you're an artist type like I am, where, you're going out for an audition. It can feel really, really personal. It's a really tough pill to swallow, especially if it's somebody that you feel blindsided you in some way, somebody that you have really high regard for. So, hang in there, and know that you're not alone. And, I think that's all I got on rejection. I'd really love to have a dating expert on to kind of delve into a little bit more, because I think that I kind of touched on some surface level things here that may or may not. I was going to say may or may not, but yeah, I think that to an intuitive, emotionally intelligent person, it's probably common sense. But again, in the heat of the moment, it's hard to remember these things. Anyway, I did want to mention, if you are listening to this the day that it comes out, August 13th, tomorrow, August 14th, is Wine, Dine, and 69's 1-year anniversary. The podcast aired its first episode a year ago, and I am so proud of where we've gone with it. I am incredibly grateful to Anna for helping me to get it off the ground. And she is no longer a host on the show, but what she contributed was absolutely incredible. And I learned so much from her, even in the short time, and she's up to really incredible things. So completely wishing her the best, and immensely grateful to her for helping me with the beginnings of this. And we're coming up on 6 months of interviews, which has been just a really cool and rewarding experience to talk to people. Speaking of talking to cool people, my episode today is with Jeanne. She is a soulmate coach, and we kind of talk about this, but I personally don't believe that we all have one soulmate. I think there are lots of different people out there that we can be compatible with. And as Alain de Botton says, compatibility is the achievement of love. It's not a precondition. So I think it's something that you work towards, right? But yeah, there are tons of people out in the world that you can have a good relationship with. And what Jeanne does is to help you prepare to find that person. And if you found that person, to help you keep it, because relationships take work. They take maintenance. Jeanne is super, super cool. I definitely want to have her on again in the future. Hey, maybe to talk about rejection. And we have a really great conversation. She reminds me of me in so many ways, and I hope I'm half as cool as her as I get older. So enjoy my conversation with Jeanne, the Soulmate Coach.
Do you find yourself struggling between the choices of playing the latest video games you got for Christmas, or debating Aunt Fanny about religion over Christmas dinner?
Do you find yourself trying to work video games into your school papers, Sunday sermon, or next book proposal?
Do you wish you had more people to argue with about the hidden philosophical meaning of your favorite RPG?
Well then, nerds, we are the podcast for you.
No Avatars Allowed is a podcast about video games, theology, and all things cultural and intellectual.
Oh, and we talk about sex a lot, too.
Our hosts Rachel Dalton, Ben Wallace, and Joshua Wise figure out each week how on earth to cram video games into some kind of bigger discussion.
And mostly, we make it work.
Check us out every Saturday morning on allportsopen.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
So grab your controller, that unused copy of Thomas Aquinas that's sitting on your shelf, maybe a negligee, and come join us for what is certain to be an interesting and strange conversation on No Avatars Allowed.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am here with my guest today, who is currently in one of my favorite places in the world, Ireland. Jeanne, how are you?
I am so happy to be here, Rachel. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Wishing I was in Ireland right now, but I know you said you lived part-time in Ireland, and I was like, oh, it's the dream.
It's really beautiful here, I have to admit. I'm pretty lucky.
So green. But I guess let's start with you telling me a little bit about yourself, who you are, how you came to be living part-time in, I think you said California and then also Ireland. And how did you get interested in soulmate work?
Well, that's a lot, and I'm very happy to tell you. Well, I'm the Soulmate Coach, and I am a certified life coach who specializes in helping people attract a soulmate relationship, or if they've already gotten a soulmate relationship, I help them to keep the relationship, to keep it thriving, because even soulmates have obstacles. And then I also help people who maybe are dissatisfied with their work and they want to do something with a little more soul purpose to it. So that's why I kind of use the catch-all phrase Soulmate Coach. But I got into this work because pretty much ever since I was in my 30s, which is a very long time ago, I was coaching people. And I started out coaching people with, about marketing or leadership, in the corporate world. But what would happen is every time just about I would coach people about those things, they would bring up relationships. And they could tell, and I could tell that I just lit up because I've always been a relationship fanatic. I love not only just my own, but I just love understanding relationship and what their purpose is. And I just I've always found it fascinating. And because I have a pretty extraordinary love story, I found that people were most inspired by that part of my life. And I figured out pretty quickly that that's really what my purpose was, to help people to attract love into their life and figure out why maybe they're successful in their, business life and they have a lot of friends, but for some reason their love life is not in alignment with, who they really are and what they deserve.
Sure.
And I thought that's really what my purpose was. I feel like my version of making the world a better place is helping people get ready to receive love, even though I believe people have many soulmates, and I believe that, of course, a person can have a great impact on the world if they stay single. That's cool. But I do believe that soulmates can really help elevate us if we pick the right people. And whether it's through contrast or just full-blown support, they help us to grow, evolve, and live more in alignment with who we are and what we really want and how we want to make an impact on the world. And so what wound up happening was I had this extraordinary love story where I shifted how I marketed myself online, and I attracted my husband literally overnight.
Wow.
And I was what many would consider a confirmed spinster, because I was, in my mid 40s and I was well over 300 pounds. And I had the dreaded, strong, intimidating personality that people that people say you should not have if you want to have a mate. And but I attracted him literally overnight. And through the process of being with my soulmate, of course, it's not always smooth sailing, but the contrast with a soulmate, I believe, not only through my own experience, but through coaching people, is to help us have the right kind of contrast or conflict that help us to get more aligned with our life purpose. So I felt guided to live in California, even though I was with someone else at the time. I had always felt like I was supposed to be in California. And that's where I wound up breaking up with that person and meeting my husband. And, I trusted that intuition, and I met him and married him. And the two of us both had a very similar vision, similar goals. And we both wanted to have a life where we were global and portable. We could live wherever we wanted. We could live part-time in California, part-time in Europe. And because I'm an Irish citizen, we picked Ireland, and we just we love it. We love both California and Ireland, and we just helped each other. He was in biotech in Silicon Valley. He loved it for a while, then kind of got tired of it and dispirited by it, and he wanted to be an artist again. And now he is. So, 10 years later, we're both living much more because of being together. We're living much more in alignment with how we want to impact the world, if that makes sense. Like, I want to be this person who spreads love, and he wants to be a visual artist, that helps young artists. So hopefully that answered the whole arc of the story.
It does. And it's so funny when I first was learning about you, and I always tell people, like, I definitely stalked you before our interview. You reminded me so much of myself in so many ways, in that, like, for example, I met my partner, the love of my life, in a period when I also had to do a lot of difference in marketing. I just changed the way that I conceptualized dating. I've always been like a long-term relationship person, and, my last long-term relationship broke up, and I decided to get onto online dating. My boyfriend is the first online date I've ever been on, which is pretty incredible. And I just changed, like, the way that I conceptualize things. I stopped putting so much pressure on it. I started trying to think of it as fun.
Yep.
And I know that, you say, like, let your freak flag fly. I just started being unabashedly myself, because what the fuck was there to lose?
Exactly.
Well,
I kind of admire you that you reached that place way younger than I did. I kind of gave too much of a fuck too early on, and actually it wasn't until at around the time where I was looking for my husband where I really gave all that up and said, what's the point of living if you're going to just live a watered down version of yourself?
Right. Absolutely. And it has a lot to do with, like, authenticity. And I think that people, like you said, like, care so much about what others think. So is that part of, like, what you do and what you walk through the people through, is how you be authentic and, care less?
Oh, yes. Yes. That's a big one, Rachel, because a lot of people are really encumbered by what other people think of them. And, it's part of our instinct, right? The more that you fit in, the more, your instinct tells you you're going to survive. But what I help clients with is getting out of the instinct mode and into the spirit mode. So because their spirit wants to be authentic, wants to live out loud, because that's how it's from that place that we can really share our gifts with the world. If we stay safe and in a box, I was talking to a networking group the other night, and in Ireland, they have even a bigger problem with this. I was on a couple of national shows, and both hosts brought up my confidence because I'm from the States. And I said, well, it wasn't always that way, but in Ireland, they have a particular problem with shining. Like, if you shine, even, in the smallest way, people make fun of you. It's a teasing, but there's like an edge to it. Like, oh, you think a lot of yourself. You're tooting your own horn, are you? All right.
Yeah.
Look at you getting ideas about yourself. And I thought, I can give people permission to let that go, because in a way it's kind of, I think what affected people the most was when I said that it's safe, but it's also kind of selfish from a spiritual perspective, because there are people who are waiting to receive your gift. And if you keep yourself small and keep yourself in a place where, you don't offend anybody with your largeness, then the people who really need you won't see you.
Yes. Yeah, my boyfriend was like, I just hadn't, met somebody who was like weird enough. I was like, here I am. It's everybody's looking for something, right? And it's exactly that. Like if you're small than the other people who are living large,
Yeah.
you need to be authentic.
Yeah, I think that was the main problem with why. So like I had done all 2 years of soul searching. I broke up with this guy who was all wrong for me, but I had, this notion of investing my time. I invested 5 years in this guy and I needed something to show for it and all this other crap. And I finally let that go. And, I realized that the reason I was I was still attracting the wrong people, even after all this work on myself, was that there was a part of me from a law of attraction perspective that was still buying into lack. And what I mean by that is, I was in my mid 40s and I already was, I said I was Rubenesque. So I already thought I was hung up on odds. And I get this a lot with clients. They're really hung up on the odds. And, the odds are, and I said, oh my gosh, did you see like Sleepless in Seattle? Yes. And I'm like, okay, because in that movie, they said if you're over 40, you have a greater chance of being killed by a terrorist than you do of getting married. And it's been disproven.
It's 2021, baby.
That's right. That was actually from the cover of a magazine back in the 80s. And it was disproven like 30 years ago, but people are still attached to that kind of thinking. And I think subconsciously, I thought my dating pool was a tiny puddle. Because I realized as I was looking at it, I'm like, why am I attracting all these cubs looking for cougars? I mean, it was almost exclusively like 25-year-old guys. And
that could be fun, though.
I know. Well, the thing is, I had already gotten my groove back, and so there was a time for that. But I was already like in this place where I really wanted my soul partner. Mm-hmm. And, I had, my gay men friends and my straight girlfriends were all like, hey, look at you. I can't believe it. Look at you. You're 300 pounds. You're in your 40s and you're attracting all these hot young guys. And I was like, yes, that's great in a sense, but it's flattering in a sense, but I don't understand why I'm attracting this and not what I want.
Sure.
So then I took a look at my profile and I realized, okay, I have a marketing background. I'm not really being authentic here, even though I wasn't lying about my age or my weight. My pictures were all current, but I wasn't really flying the freak flag to your point. I wasn't upfront about what my agenda was, which was to get married, right? We're all taught not to say that. Oh, God forbid that you scare somebody away. And so I wasn't honest about that because I asked these young guys, I was like, hey, man, no judgment whatsoever. I'm so curious, though. What made you reach out to me? Mm-hmm. And they were like, well, to be honest, you don't look like you're looking to marry, get married. You look like a hell of a lot of fun. You're probably better in bed because you're more experienced. And you don't want to have my baby like all the women my age. So I went, okay, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it. And
information gathering.
And I was like, okay, so I need to be really clear about what my agenda is. And so I rewrote my profile and then I put in there, okay, you know what? I'm not going to be afraid about what my deal breakers are. I know that they say you shouldn't put that in there because it scares people away, but I kind of think I should scare people away because I'm wasting a lot of time on terrible dates. Mm-hmm. So I changed it. I changed my profile, changed everything. And I really just put myself out there in a big way. And what was so funny as I made this deal with myself. Okay, I am not going to check my app. I was on Match and a whole bunch of other ones. I'm not going to check these apps more than once a day. And I'm only going to do it for like 30 minutes. That's it. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to live my life and not obsess over this. Woke up the next morning and there were 4 guys, all my age, all writing me like, oh my God, you are amazing. I had to read this profile like 3 or 4 times. It was so refreshing, so vivid. I could really see myself with someone like you. Let's meet. And one of them was Todd, my husband, my future husband.
Aw. That's amazing. I'm grinning. I'm like, oh, like little fuzzy feelings. It's amazing how it's set on what you want.
Yeah, I know occasionally people are like, oh, come on, the next day. It was the next morning. And I feel like that's really, Rachel, what confirmed for me that this was my life's work, because I didn't know anybody else who had a story like that. That's what I think people really resonate with. And it's not only just the swiftness of it, of the transformation and the results, like the shift was like seismic and fast. But I think it's also the fact that I was an older woman, a big girl, and I had all these things going against me that people are still afraid to this day is what's counting against them, having a strong, independent, and fierce personality. Most people who come to me, they're glad they have it, but they're so disappointed. They really believe in their hearts that nobody wants that, which is completely untrue. It's just a myth.
I was going to say, there's so many people who want that.
Well, I was just sharing in my webinar, I do, private coaching, but I do group programs. And in this group program I was doing, I was explaining that actual research has shown that, for example, in straight relationships, women are extremely afraid of being strong. And the number one word I get that's a code for me that they need my help is when they say, men find me intimidating.
Yep. I knew you were going to say it.
Right. And, men don't want a strong, independent woman. Well, I showed them tonight and in other programs that actually is not the truth. What is the key is they want somebody strong. They want somebody independent, because guys actually do feel exhausted when a woman wants rescuing all the time. Yeah. I'm sure it's the same in gay relationships too. Like if you're just like always rescuing somebody, you feel needed, but after a while it's exhausting. But the key is to if you allow yourself to be strong, but also vulnerable, and to also allow the other person to feel needed. That's what makes the difference, and why I think so many people have trouble is that they're so afraid to they're so afraid to need other people and afraid to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. And that lands on such a good point. It kind of follows up with one of another questions that I had for you, which was, so we're kind of talking about like how to being your big self, right? Like your big personality, being completely yourself, unabashed, let it go, and see where the chips fall. What do you think about the idea of too much? I always have taken on this tactic that I have no issue being like 100% myself when it comes to who I am. I have no issue being vulnerable about who I am. I, however, tend to hold back a little bit when it comes to being vulnerable about how I feel about the other person too early on.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that? Do you think that like plays into it all? Like holding some cards closer to your chest, kind of. Some people could say I'm crazy.
No, not at all. I mean, I think first of all, you had it right with being 100% yourself, because we're just taught not to date with any common sense. We're taught to kind of hide, what makes us unique and unusual, because we're taught you don't want to scare anyone away. But in reality, you really do want to scare away the people who cannot handle your largeness.
Yeah.
But what you were saying with sharing too much about how you feel. So there's a couple of parts to that. When I have clients who say, okay, I don't have any trouble being myself, but I do get into trouble when I share too soon how much I care for someone. So I think you have to ask yourself if this is a pattern in your life, not you specifically, I mean the collective you. If this is a pattern in your life where you kind of jump in too quickly with I love you, or jump in too quickly with, making a declaration of, commitment, then you just have to look at where is that coming from? Is that coming from a place of neediness or fear? And if that's the case, then I would work on that and not, jump in too quickly. However, if it's coming from a place of, okay, it's no, you check in with yourself, it's no neediness. I know enough about this person to really understand they are a good fit for me. I know their deal breakers. They know mine. I know their goals. They know mine, and they're a fit, and it feels good. Then I don't see a problem with sharing your feelings. For example, if you're still with me. My husband and I realized on the third date we were going to be married.
Yeah.
And common wisdom would tell you that you don't talk, about love or marriage. And we did wait 2 years to get married. We lived together. We lived in sin. And we got to, we got to check each other out, check each other's goods out, and all that stuff. He had a son too. So I needed to see how was I going to be a stepmother, which totally rocked, by the way. I loved being a stepmother. He was such a great kid. I mean, he's grown now, but the thing was that we had spent so much time before we even met talking about all the important things before, so that we knew before, like when we actually physically met, we already knew, okay, we're in our 40s. We know each other's deal. We know what we've been through. We know what we want. We know the goals. And, so then we met, and here's another piece of what I tell clients is really super, super important. And it's managing your expectations around what you're looking for when you meet the person.
Yes,
so for
100%.
You know where I'm going, like what's driving your love train, right? What's driving that love train? Are you looking for that exciting Hollywood spark? And if it's not there, do you dismiss the person? And I see that a lot with my clients is that they'll say to me things like, I did meet someone I thought was pretty great, but, I didn't really feel a spark. And, I just kind of didn't answer their phone call or their text. And it breaks my heart when I hear that, because you want to make decisions not based on this crazy romantic idealized notion of spark, which is really just physical hormones and instinct.
It's biology, yeah.
Right? I mean, it is. It's an instinct. And people don't realize how much of it is instinct and also programming from, watching movies, for example, that if you don't feel that, you're settling. When really you want to look for the person that you don't feel that crazy excitement and butterflies with. You want the person you feel comfortable and authentic with. And
Right.
a big part, who's attracted to you right now. Have you ever been on a date with somebody who kind of, they liked you, but they were kind of hinting around that to see how you were going to fix and change yourself?
I don't know if I've ever had that, but I can tell you, if I had $1 for every boyfriend that when they broke up with me said, "You're the type of girl I'd want to marry," but like I'm just not ready for that now. So like a version of that, just like not wanting to be with me right now. Do
you know why that is? I have an answer for why that is.
They weren't ready.
Yeah. I mean, what women don't realize, so if you have women in your 20s listening, listen up, girls, because the thing with men in their 20s is that they're usually in what one of my favorite experts on men, Alison Armstrong, she talks about how men have developmental stages. Women are come out of the womb practically ready for a relationship.
Yes.
But men go through stages. One is like the page, where they're like this boy up before puberty, where they're following the knights in shining armor around. The knights are puberty through their 20s. And these are the guys who have this big zest for life, and they have to have adventure in their lives. It's the adventure that helps them define who they are. And this is when they break women's hearts, because they can completely be in love with you and say to you, "Hey, I have a job in Paris. I'm going to go live there for a year. Bye." Or I'm going to go hiking in South America for a year. Love you, but bye. They have to go through that. And then when you want to get a guy is when he's a prince. And a prince can happen like in their late 20s to early 30s when they start. And that's when they're building their kingdom. They're trying to figure out what their kingdom is. It's a career. It's a lifestyle. What is that? The only exception is that if a man in his 20s thinks that having a partner is an adventure and having a family is an adventure, then they would be ready to commit in their 20s. But usually it's the 30s when they're ready. And then, once they're the prince and, they can figure out if they want to move their queen or king. And that's a whole other conversation, but
it's a great analogy.
They become kings after the midlife crisis, but that's a whole other conversation.
It's important. It's funny. It kind of follows like the tarot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very interesting. Let me see. What else? I feel like, what else do I want to ask you? Ooh, okay. Walk me through some steps that you recommend that people do. Like, what work can people do internally to attract their inner soulmate? Whether that means, things that they're doing for themselves or things that they're doing to like call someone in.
Thank you for asking. I actually have a 6-step process. This is from my own experience, but also through coaching. And it's in my book, Be the Soulmate You Want to Attract, if people are curious. But it starts with forgiveness. And a lot of times clients will come to me. They usually tend to be successful, and they've usually are self-aware enough that they've done some form of self-help work or or therapy. And they'll be like, "Oh, come on. I've done forgiveness. I've forgiven my exes, what have you." But as I look at them and I talk to them, I can sense that they're not really, they haven't really moved on from the narratives around those relationships. So I do this thing in my coaching called the Ghosts of Relationships Past Pajama Hours. And we get together in pajamas, we have a cocktail, and we talk about, okay, let's talk about your past relationships and all those stories. And let me listen and hear, I I listen and I hear for any attachments they still have that they may be unaware of, and
Sure.
because I feel like there's an energetic cord when you haven't fully either forgiven yourself for accepting less in a relationship, or you haven't forgiven the other person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Next step is really learning about what your negative patterns are, what your top fears are, whether it's like commitment or a fear of intimacy. Like you have a fear of commitment if, you feel like in relationships engulf you or hold you back. You can have a fear of intimacy. A big clue if you have a fear of intimacy is if you use the word, I'm a chameleon. Because usually people who say that are people who are like, it's great to kind of be able to blend in with a bunch of different crowds. But if it's a way of kind of hiding, it can become, fear of intimacy. And there's all these other fears like fear of rejection, fear of making a mistake. And then there's lack of confidence, which I'll get to in a minute. But step 3 is about learning how to be the hero or heroine in your story. And usually what I'll do is I'll help clients figure out, okay, let's look at your life. Let's look at your career, your other relationships, your money, your wellness. Let's see where you're not really stepping up for yourself, and let's change that. Because I really believe that if you really want to attract somebody much better for you, you have to first be the better version of you. And let's get your life. It's not that you necessarily have to heal everything or you have to have arrived in your dream life, but you have to be clear about what that is and where you're going, and at least take baby steps forward towards that. And then the 4th step is learning how to, trust yourself again, trust your intuition. I do a lot of work with clients on that. People will, they kind of say in their heads that they trust themselves, but their behavior shows that they really don't trust themselves or the process. They're always trying to force a result. They don't know how to allow or receive the love that they deserve. They don't make space for it. So there's that. And then there's step 5 is learning to market yourself like you believe in the product.
There you go.
I go through heavily how to write the profile, like you talked about, like you did yours, in a way that is going to scare away the people who don't fit, and is going to be like a beacon, like the Batman signal to your people. A big part of that, Rachel, is I get a lot of clients who lack confidence. Not in their professional lives, but there's some reason why they're not in their love lives. And so sometimes I'll help them get in touch with what their empowered inner alter ego is. And it's kind of like Beyonce and Sasha Fierce. It's not like you're looking to be a different person. You're just tapping into when you're afraid. Beyonce was originally afraid. She had imposter syndrome. And she tapped into a part of herself, that confident, fierce part of herself that was there when she was a little girl. And we all have, whether, when we were little girls or little boys, we all had, before life got in the way, we had this part of us that was pretty fierce in our own way. And over time, we lose connection with that, or it goes away because of trauma, whatever.
Your shine gets dulled.
Yeah. And I help them get in touch with that. And then in step 6, I just help them learn to date in a different way that makes more sense. It's not so chemistry driven. It's driven by more soulful strategy, which I think we touched on quite a bit. So hopefully that makes sense.
It does. And those steps, they're so important. And I can say, for me, the learning how to be the hero or heroine in your life was like such a turning point. Like just start. Yeah, that's so important. And I was going to ask you about the alter egos too. Just the fact that sometimes I find that it helps me if I think about myself as being like the lead character in like a teenage rom-com. It just makes me look at myself a little more different, right? Like, or like, you put on some music and you dance around like you're in a music video. I don't know. Like, I do that too. And I can't even speak to how helpful I think it is. So it's like another alter ego thing.
I wish you could see the chair I'm sitting in, because I'm sitting in a leopard throne with intricate gold border filigree, I guess you would call it. It's pretty fierce, but it's definitely too much for the average person. My husband wanted one too, so he's got one. And the thing is, my alter ego is a drag queen.
Okay.
Her name is Mystique Royale. And I call on her because when I was in my 20s, I was really fully in touch with what made me fabulous. I would go out in these nightclubs. I would live my life. I would have, I would wear these like great bustiers. The girls were up and out. I would have like these long kimonos and big hair and big nails. And I was just like really feeling myself. But the problem is that I was in my early 30s and I was too swayed by what other people thought. And what wound up happening was I would get people who would either be jealous of the sense of freedom I had and they would shame me, or people from work who would come out and see me and be like, "Whoa, girl, that's too much." And so I learned to kind of hide that for a while. And I truly believe that that's why I attracted a relationship that wasn't right for me, because I wasn't being fully myself. Yeah.
I you remind me so much of myself. Like my last relationship, my like ex would ask me to like tone things down. And I felt like ashamed of like, the big parts of who I was. Whereas like, I will just say the most ridiculous things and, my partner cracks up. So it goes along with that quote that's like, be yourself. If some people think that you're too much, they're not your people.
Yep.
Right? Like that's like the big
Hell
quote,
yes.
the big thing that people say. And I really hope that people, I do have to say, you were saying to the people in their 20s, it does get easier. I feel like once I hit like 28, I was just like, oh, fuck this. Like, I'm gonna live the way that I want to live, and
absolutely,
just keep going. So,
abso-fucking-lutely.
keep do you like life's too short, right?
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
love that that's your bottom line.
Yes,
it's just how to live with integrity, and how living with integrity at the end of the day really is going to bring in that person for you.
I agree 100%.
Can you give me just go ahead and take a few minutes, like where can people find you? Tell us about your book.
Oh yay.
Where can people follow you? Go ahead and promo yourself.
Okay, let's see. Okay, well, I have a website, mysoulmatecoach.com, and I have a lot of information. People can sign up if you subscribe. I will not spam you. I have a lot of free tips, free guided meditations. I'm big on meditations. I think they're an important part of connecting to your future vision and the emotions of it so you can manifest. But I also have a community online on social media. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram at the handle @mysoulmatecoach. And, if you reach out to me in any of those places, let me know what you're going through. And, I will, give you my best advice that I can. And if there's an event that's coming up, I have a lot of free webinars, I have a lot of free videos, but I also have, group programs that I do, and private coaching. I'm willing to do, a free consultation if people, want some more personalized attention. That's pretty cool.
That's amazing.
That's it. And then I have this book.
We like free things.
That's right. I have this book, Be the Soulmate You Want to Attract. It's got 4.5 stars on Amazon. So I'm really proud of that. It was, I think, I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but it was rated by Law of Attraction magazine as a must-read book. Proud of that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And Reader's Favorite gave it 5 stars. So I think it's a really, it's the one thing that has really made me feel good about it is, people have reported to me, it not only works for finding a soulmate, but helping you really get aligned with who you are, what you want, and it also improves other relationships. I feel really good about that. But the most important thing I love is when people tell me, oh, it feels like you're like my BFF sitting in the room with me when I read it.
That's really good feedback. That is incredible. And I'm definitely going to be following you too, just because, as you just said, I feel like you're my friend now. So.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just so proud of you. I wish I had been as wise as you are when I was your age, but I guess I had to go through all this contrast so I can do what I do.
Yeah, we are all on our own journeys. And hey, yours got you exactly where you were supposed to be, right? In that throne.
Indeed.
Well, thank you so much, Jeanne. This has been fantastic, and I can't wait for people. I mean, your advice and everything, like your entire brand completely lines up with all of my philosophies of relationships.
Yay!
So you just have a way more succinct and put together way of expressing it. So just send this to people when I have advice for them.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot.
Well, thank you for being here, and everyone, thank you for listening. I am your host, Rachel Dalton, here with my soulmate coach, Jeanne, and let's keep talking.